My guest today is Dennis Welch, who is a poet, a businessman, a published writer, and a PR and communications expert with a great relationship in the business media and beyond. He has written 2 books of his own and is an in-demand speaker. Additionally, Dennis is also a singer, songwriter, and now a recording artist. In today's episode, we talk about his new album, What Love Makes Us Do, that was just released. It is a continuation of a lifetime of songwriting, authoring books, and speaking. He has found his calling in his life, and he's here today to share it with us. Welcome to Lifeology.
Thank you, James. Thanks for having me on.
I am really looking forward to this. It's funny, you and I've known you as a publicist. I've been able to interview a few of your clients, and I had no idea that there was this other side of you. Nor did I know about the additional background that you did when you were writing with Gallup and all these different things. So I was like, wow, we have a lot in common in a lot of ways.
Well, you know, James, it goes both ways. Okay, so when I approached you, I knew we were getting close to finishing this record, and I approached you. You know, I'm really good at promoting other people. It's difficult for me to go out there and tell people how great I am. But anyway, and so when I approached you, with some trepidation, obviously, and you didn't really know, and I didn't know. Yeah. I didn't know that you were a musician as well. And it's like, these kind of things, just so you know, they've happened to me so often now that I've just stopped, trying to explain those things. I think that just means that that I'm not in charge, apparently, of how things go.
I agree. Well, I wanted to jump in first off to your PR stuff. So when you graduated from college, I know, didn't you work with Gallup? So Gallup is I'll let you explain what Gallup is, because I've worked with them from a psychological approach, but just want to transition into that, and then go into music, because as we know, musicians, that's always a part of our life, even though it may not always be the forefront of our life, but it is a part of our life. So how did you go from university to working for Gallup, and obviously explain what Gallup is?
Well, so what happened for me was when I got out of college, my plan was to be a recording artist and singer songwriter, and I made a few records, did a little bit of touring, that kind of stuff, and then in my mid 30s, I was, I think, relatively close to a big record deal, and I had a chance to go out on tour with Billy Squire and a band called King's X. And I'd never toured like these guys tour. And, every day, I had little kids. I had to leave them, my sons, my wife, I had to, leave home basically. And you know how it works, in the touring world, you just go and you go until nobody wants you to go. Right. And so I lasted about 3 weeks on this tour. And I got to Salt Lake City, Utah, and every day the road manager was coming in and saying, "Hey, listen, we've got 10 more dates added to the tour," and he was excited about it. And I was like, "I'm not excited about this, okay?" And so anyway, so I got to Salt Lake City, and I called the manager who had sent me out there, and I was a technician, and I didn't know what I was doing. I was just driving a truck and making a little money because I needed it. And I called him and I said, "Man, I can't do this." I said, "I've pursued this now for such a long time, and I'm right on the cusp of it. And now I can't do it. And so I can't call my kids anymore and say, I don't know when I'm coming home." And I just couldn't do it. So anyway, he said, "Listen, I love you. I'll put a plane ticket out at the airport for you. Come home and think about what you're doing and what you're going to do next." He said, "Because sometimes the ladder of success is against the wrong wall. And so, don't stop writing because everybody loves your songwriting. Just keep writing. Promise me you'll do that." So I came home and I went to work for the Gallup organization right when they were transitioning from being a not terribly profitable polling company to the sort of consulting juggernaut that they became. Because, polling became a commodity and nobody cared who did it. They just wanted the data. And so Gallup got smart and said, "Hey, you know what? We have 60 years of data. So let's write some books about engagement and strengths and all the stuff that they did that was so remarkable." So, the company boomed right at the time that I got there. So they needed people to do everything. So I went back and got an MBA. I started Spanish interviewing at Gallup. I became a director of marketing. They needed a senior staff writer to interview their their executives that we worked with. And so they flew me around the country and I got to do that. So it was a heyday and a great time.
Yeah.
If you like doing a lot of different things and you can do them pretty well, it was wonderful. So it was a blessing. I was there 13 years. And then at the end of year 13, I realized it was time to do something else. And I wasn't even really sure what that was, but it was time. And so my wife and I have a lot of faith in these things. We know when you're being stopped, that's really not failure. That's just a roadblock for you to find something else. So, so I, went into the PR business. Yeah. I love books. I've always been a word guy. So that was cool,
Well, what's interesting to me is, thanks for sharing all that. What's interesting is, so you went and you worked for Gallup, and then you wrote these, your own books, et cetera, but you never stopped writing. And so as a songwriter, you still did it. And so you may have been a different type of writing, but you still kept writing. And I think that's a lesson for all of us, is when we realize that life may pivot or things may happen. And so our career may change, but the gifts that are inside of us still come out. I know for me, I was a musician since I was the age of 3. Vocal performance major, piano performance major, all that I did. And so for me, it was something that I did all the time. And so when I graduated from university, undergrad, I had the opportunity to go, I wanted to go to either new school or to a school out in LA, and I was going to pursue my music, et cetera. And I thought, and at that time I was like, I'm going to play it safe, because I had one of my degrees was in psychology. So I, quote, played it safe, went to graduate school, because I was like, what happens if I don't make it? And many people have that. And I'm fine with where I'm at, because I love who I am today. And so I put my music on hold for a while. And then I did very well in psychology. And so I had a private practice in Washington, D.C. And in 2012, I made a change and wanted to make a change. And so that's how Lifeology started. But to pivot on what you're saying, or piggyback rather, is my voice was always my primary instrument, but I still use my voice. So I still may not use my voice in song, but I still use my voice on the radio. I still use my voice on television. And so I think that's so important, that everything still works. It just may look, like you said, on a different wall. The ladder may be on a different wall.
You know what that says, James? That says that nothing is wasted.
Yes.
And that, it may look different than what you thought it might look like, but that doesn't make it any less effective.
Yeah,
exactly. And the other thing it says is that, so all these years, I've written 500 songs, I haven't recorded all of those, but
like Dolly Parton.
like Dolly Parton. But, but here's the thing is that, people will say sometimes, like, what are you doing in a writing room, on a Tuesday night for hours parsing a single, word or whatever. And the answer is, I just like you. And people like us, it's hard to explain, but it's like, I can't not do it. If I'm driving, when I used to tour some, I would occasionally have, kids especially come up to my record table and they would say, I want to be a songwriter too. And I would say, well, when you drive to the grocery store, do you turn your radio off and do you hear music? Because if you don't, there's no way that I can make, you can hone all of this stuff and get better at it, but I can't make you hear or hear an idea that crystallizes and you say, okay, I got to get home and write this down, or I've got to write it down in the car. If you have something in the car to write with, you know what I'm talking about. And there's no way to describe that to anybody. And so all these years, I never felt like that my writing and my music was on hold. I mean, I would do a gig every so often and a lot of people would show up and it was fun. And it gave me a chance to try out what I was working on. And so I kept it moving and, moving forward as if any minute I was going to turn a corner and something was going to happen. And the last 18 months has been that corner turn, if you want to call it that. So
that is amazing.
You know how it works.
Well, let's transition into your new album, What Love Makes Us Do. Tell me about that.
Well, it was written out, a lot of my stuff, how writing is, but, it was written in a really painful moment. Our sons had been in some trouble and issues and stuff. And so I was just crestfallen. And when you're in that situation as a father, you only have two choices, really. One is to show mercy and to hang in there until this gets better, or do what a lot of, I think, fathers especially do, is they sort of discard you and say, look, you know what, this is too much trouble. You call me when you get it together, kind of thing. Well, I didn't know how to do that second thing. And so I thought about one night I was home by myself. Susie, my wife, was traveling, and I was thinking about the sacrifices that I was making for love. And that this song just came. And you know, and look, here's the crazy part. So now we're recording this music, and I have a amazing producer, Rich Herring, plays with Little River Band. He's in Nashville. Love this guy. He's made it so easy to do this. But you know, so it might be plausible that he and I would talk about this, and he would have an idea of what I heard 12 years ago when I wrote the song. But,
interesting. Okay.
But what's not plausible is that he sent the song out to a top session piano keyboard guy in Nashville. And James, when I got this track back to sing on, I broke down when I listened to it. And I called him and I said, how did you guys know this? How did you know what I heard? I didn't know how to make it do this, but how did you know what I heard? And you know what? There's something very supernatural about all of that, I think, that's kind of inexplicable. You know, science can try to explain it, but I think there's something else going on there. You know what I mean? So,
wow.
Yeah.
And that's amazing that they were able to, not put into words per se, but to embody to magnify your dream for that song, to be able to take it. Yeah. And to be able to do that. And then you were able to sing on it. So it's the culmination of not only your gift, but also their gift, as they were able to really capture what it is you tried to create. And when I listened to the album, I could hear a lot of the emotion. I could hear a lot of, I don't want to say it felt raw, because that's not the right word. You emoted in a way that I felt what you were going through. I felt the emotion. I could hear the highs, the lows, the nostalgia, the hope. I felt it and I heard it. And there's so many of the tracks that I heard. Yeah. And I was like, wow, that's absolutely beautiful. In fact, I was out walking my dog when you sent me the album the other day, and I was listening to it and I was like, this is really good. And in fact, it stirred some emotions in me about things I was going through. So I can't wait for the audience to hear it, because it's a beautiful album.
You know what? That's the highest praise you can give me, James. You know, one of the things that I think that when you continue to pursue something that you know you're here for, that there's a conspiracy that happens, and it may not happen in the time that you want it to happen, but it just happens. And so, you know, for years I would go to Nashville, let's say, and I would meet with publishers, and they would say, we don't get it. You know, we don't understand what you're doing. You know, you're not writing about pickup trucks and, you know, bonfires and stuff. And so we don't really know what to do with that. And so, a few years ago, I miraculously became friends with the guy who co-wrote "I Can't Make You Love Me," and he's from Houston, like I am, and all of that. And so one day we were sitting in Nashville. I was up there again for another meeting that I didn't want to go to, basically. And he said, what are you doing this afternoon? I said, well, I'm going to see a publisher. And I said, I'm probably going to hear the same story, you know, that I don't do bonfires or whatever, chicks in tight jeans, you know. And so he said, well, let me tell you about some of my songs. And he took me through his songs that he'll be remembered for. And not one of those was any of the things that a publisher, somebody who's trying to make commerce out of art, would say, yeah, that's exactly what we're looking for. And yet when actual people, you know, it got past the business people and got to the artists, let's say, you know, they couldn't leave it alone, and it moved them in a way. It's like, you know what, I have to record this, and I have to sing this song. And so, you know, so when you say that, James, when you say I'm out walking my dog and I was really moved by this and it made me rethink some things or anything like that, to me, that's my definition of success.
Yes, I
I don't
agree.
really care if I'm working on a book right now called Redefining Success. It'll come out, I hope, next year sometime if I can ever finish it. And,
Yeah.
and it's about this very thing. When you say I've written a book, what's the first thing people say? They say, how many did you sell? You know what I think? I think, what do you care how many I sold?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was
Right?
I totally get that.
Here's what's important is that somebody's going to hear a James Miller song out there when they really need to hear it, and their life is going to be changed. And you're probably never going to know that person.
Yeah.
The ripples will go out to a place that you can't get to. And so, you're wildly successful because you've done that. If you choose to adopt that version of success, that's what success is. And so for me, I'm already, just getting to do this stuff and getting to participate every day and work with books and all the things I do in my life right now. I feel already like a successful person, and, anything else is sort of gravy, on top of that. So, and that's, that makes it easier, because what it does is it also keeps you from having the scarcity mentality that a lot of people have. Like, if something good happens for you, it didn't happen for me. I don't care. I'm happy for you if that happens. And it's a great place to get to, because it causes you to create differently too, I think, So anyway, that's probably more than you wanted to know, but
I absolutely love that. I love that because, that's one thing I remember when I first started, and I first started on YouTube, and I hardly got any views, but my point was, I'm creating my brand and I'm doing this because I'm supposed to do this. So just like you said, when you close your eyes and you can see the song or you hear the song, same thing with me as well. And so I did YouTube episodes for 6 months every single day because I wanted to hone my craft. I wanted to make sure that I was getting better at it. So if you see the first couple of months, pretty bad. Content was good, but the production and how I presented was not so well. Anyway, my point is that when you understand why you do it, what's your motivation for doing this, it changes, because it removes the stigma of how many likes do I get, or how many things do I sell, or how many, whatever it might be, as for how many followers do I have. When you remove that, you simply allow yourself to be. And when you can be and be that person and hone and really nurture that talent and that gift, then doors do open. You randomly met this person who wrote that song, I Can't Make You Love Me, which love that song. All of that was, I'm assuming, done because you weren't out. Your metric of success, or your reason for doing things, was because it was what was right for you, what was healthy for you, what was the now for you. And many people don't realize that if you get lost in the glitz and glamour, that's an external motivator that won't last forever. One day you're in, one day you're out. So when you do it because you're supposed to do it, that's when the success happens. And that success is more, you can maintain that. But if something burns out too quickly, well, then you've lost it. And you're like, well, why am I doing this? And you have to rethink everything. Right. But the point is that slow burn of, I'm doing this because I'm called to do this, or I'm supposed to do this, that's what will always sustain you, which will always propel you to the next level of your life.
And think, James, how different the world would be if people adopted that view of everything that they do. So the numbers, the Gallup numbers. You've probably seen these numbers. So when I was there, they started asking the question, the Q12, the engagement study. One of the questions is, and this is a self-reported question, man, so the numbers are probably worse than this. But the question is, at work, I get to do what I do best every day. You know what? Yeah. Only one person in 5, James, for 30 years has answered yes to that question.
Oh my
80% of us, 80% of us are just doing stuff every day. We're not doing what we were wired and called to do. And, and part of it is what you're talking about, I think, is that the conflict between, I say to people in my circle all the time that think, hey, I'm too old now. I'm 60. Hey, I'm 65. I went on Medicare in January. That's kind of a joke now. That now all of a sudden I got a hit song out there and I'm on Medicare. It couldn't happen 20 years ago, right? But here's the thing is that I've never felt less than at any point in this process just because somebody else, something happened for them, right? But that conflict will cause you to, if that's your definition of success is the corner office, let's say, let's just use that one definition of success. You will do anything to get there. And then you know what? When you get there, somebody's going to say, are you happy? Because you don't look happy. And the answer is probably going to be no, this didn't do it for me. And the reason is that our souls, James Miller was built to create. You're wired to create, and that's what you're doing. And you know what? And so anything else you would have done in your life, even if you had your name on the outside of the building and you owned the building,
Yeah.
you would have felt like, you know what? There's this gnawing, kind of chasm and feeling in me that I'm not accomplishing what I came here for. And that's a terrible, regrets are a terrible thing. Failure's not so bad. You can fix that. Regrets are awful. And, I would bet that you don't have hardly any regrets in your life because you said, hey, when nobody's looking, I'm going to go on YouTube and I'm going to do these things every day. You know what? And so, but that's brave, James. That's the bravery it takes to step out and say, okay, there's this path that everybody else is well worn, right? And then there's this path that I'm looking at going, it's crazy, but I'm supposed to be on that path. Yeah. Right. And that's when I think that's when greatness really happens, in my opinion, is the people who choose that, because I told somebody last week, they said, what is going on with you? Okay. I mean, all of this stuff around your music, I said, I feel like I've plugged into 220 and all the lights have come on, Yeah. And I love it. And the reason that they have, James, is for the same reason that they're coming on for you and people are pursuing you to do network things and all this stuff, is because, you've taken your significant gifts and you've plugged them into a place where you've dovetailed them into a place where you can be world class at something. How many people are doing that? I mean, I apparently only 20% of us, right?
Yeah. Well, what I love about you as well, because thank you so much. I thank you for your kind words. I truly appreciate you saying that. When I think back on you, though, when you were younger and you're like, I can't do this anymore. At that time, it wasn't the right time for you. If there's a right time, there's a wrong time. And so it's a misplaced time, rather. And so learning how to say, this is still in me, and the timing may not be right, but the timing will be right. And so knowing that the dream and the gift that you've been given and you've been focusing on that now comes to fruition and maturation years later, but you never stopped. And I think that's the struggle with many people, is when the door closes, we either think, okay, this isn't going to happen, and then we don't continue to build our craft or hone our craft or continue moving forward. Because when the time is right, there's nothing worse than having a door open and you're not prepared to enter that door because you didn't follow through with your dream. And I say this respectfully because we've all been in that position. But I really want to encourage my listeners today and viewers that if you have a door that feels like it's closed, it's just simply not the right door. And so just like Dennis, he found that door, he's opened it up, and now he is doing wonderful, amazing things.
And let me just say this, at the time, because I didn't know better, it felt like failure. It's like, okay, now what am I going to do? I'm a 35-year-old man with no business background and all this stuff. And, but you know what? But now I look back and I did a documentary 3 or 4 years ago. A friend of mine, daughter, is in the UT Film School. University of Texas Film School. And she called me up one day. She said, hey, we're working on a documentary. Would you like to be in it? I didn't even know what it was, but I know her. And so I said, absolutely. So Susie and I go down to the school and we walk into their studio and all the lights come up. And then my friend's daughter stands in front of me and she asks this great question. She says, so you're 62 now, or whatever I was. She goes, when you were 22 like us, how did you know you'd be here? I said, well, let me be honest. I said, I didn't know I'd be here because I didn't know there was a here to be. I didn't know, but I said, but I did know what being here felt like. And as much as I was able to go through my life and economically make decisions, that kept my lights on and stuff, I'd always chose the thing that felt like being here. And now it's brought me here. But is this the place that I would have chosen? No, because I didn't know how great it would be to be here. And every stop along the way, until a certain age, felt like, okay, you know what? I guess I just failed. I guess this didn't work. Not true at all. Because look, I was my own publicist, James, when I was doing music back there at 25, and I was on TV and radio everywhere. Okay. My hometown, the Houston Post, ran a half-a-page story on me when my album Man of Steel came out. And it was a big story, like it was a big deal. It's like, I'm nobody in the scheme of things in the music business. And
Yeah,
so, but at the end of that, the question was, so why did I do this? What was it for? You know what? 35 years later, I became the publicist for the people I bring to you. And I knew how to do it. I knew what I was doing. And it was so much easier to do it for John Maxwell than it was to do it for myself. Right. And so, but you have to adopt the mindset that, look, nothing is wasted. And I'm going to be honest with myself. I'm going to learn about who I am, and I'm going to pursue the things that I'm here for, even if the naysayers around me think that's crazy.
Yes.
It's a very, and it can be a rough road because there's a lot of naysayers. There are.
Yes. Yeah.
Sometimes the naysayer is in here.
Yeah,
right?
It's true. Yeah, your self-talk always determines how far you go.
Yeah.
And I would tell people you're as successful as you want to be. And so you're as successful as you think you will be. And so that is the difference the difference between people who go further and don't go further. And so it's really more how do we perceive ourselves and where do we perceive ourselves? When you close your eyes, what do you envision? And I think that is something people forget is when we lose sight of it or think we've lost our ability to be successful, simply close your eyes and you'll see it again.
So that Why Not Me, the song Why Not Me that's on this record.
That's a good one.
It's a hit song. It's out there.
It's a really good song.
Tony Mantor has recorded it.
Yeah.
It's a number one song in country, in the medium markets and all that. And so early on, it was nominated for a Grammy for Song of the Year.
Wow.
And Country Song of the Year. So it did. I didn't plan to win a Grammy, just so you know. But here's what I did do is just as a joke, I went to my wife, a few days after I found this out. All of a sudden, my phone's blowing up, and people are saying, "Oh my gosh, you're nominated for a Grammy? How'd this happen?" The answer is I don't know. But anyway, and so I went to her and I said, "Honey, I just want you to know I've polished up and created my Grammy acceptance speech."
Good for you.
And she said, "Okay, let me hear this." And so here it is. And so I'm saving it. And but my speech is, I hold up the little trophy, right? And I say, if you're here and you've been working a really long time on something you're supposed to be doing in this world, don't stop, because you never know what's around the next corner.
Yes.
And so, most people, my songwriter friends in Nashville that have done well, I'll say, are you really that much better than everybody else? And the answer is no, but I'm still here. I'm still doing this every day. The people who come here and expect it to happen in 5 minutes or a year or 5 years, they're not here anymore. And so that's a lesson for all of us. It's like, you know what? The reason you're doing well, James, is because you didn't stop back there. You kept plugging in pieces of this and making something of your own, which is a very unique, it's a unique thing that you have. And it's not like anybody else's. And by the way, mine's not either. And I'm okay with that. I think that's some of the joy of doing it, is that people say, I don't know, I don't understand what you're doing. That's okay. You don't have to. I do.
Yeah.
Right.
It's exactly. And unfortunately our time is up, but I want to thank you so much, Dennis. I can't wait for my listeners to listen to it, to purchase this album, What Love Makes Us Do. Where do they find all this information online?
So we are working. We're working on by the time this airs, there'll be a website that you can come to and listen and buy and all that stuff. It'll also be up on all the streaming services like they do and these days, and then I'm also going to I'm actually creating, because I'm old school, I'm creating a few CDs that I'll sign and send to people so they can buy them on my website. And hopefully by the time this airs, we will actually have one. So
awesome. All right. Well, my listeners also know that if they can't find this information any other place, go to the show notes at jamesmillerlifeology.com. And in the show notes, as well as in the introduction of this, I will have the website where you may purchase this. And also, once again, go to all the streaming platforms and you can listen to the album of What Love Makes Us Do by Dennis Welch. Dennis, thank you so much. We had a wonderful guest research. I had a fantastic time with you today.
Enjoyable. Thank you so much.